Welcome to our 9th John study. In our last John study together, we talked about John 15 and 16 and wrapped up those 7 absolute I am statements with ending it on abiding in Jesus. In this study, we're going to look at chapters 17 and 18. And we're going to talk about how Jesus prayed for us and how he headed to the cross for us. What makes chapter 17 so unique is that it is a chapter completely devoted to how Jesus prayed for you before he headed to the cross. So I want to look at the ways that he specifically prayed for us. And the first one is in verse 11. Jesus prayed, "Holy Father, keep them in your name, which you have given me, that they may be one, even as we are one." Jesus prayed that we would be so unified that people would see God through us, that we would see unity that only God can give us. And that is part of participation with Jesus. We participate in the communion of the triune God, that we become part of his body, a part of a community, unified. He also prayed in verse 13, "But now I am coming to you, and these things I speak in the world, that they may have my joy fulfilled in themselves." Jesus has mentioned several times in John's gospel of filling us with joy so that our joy may be full, our joy may be complete. Because joy only comes from Jesus. Yes, following Jesus has its hard times, but joy is complete by following him, by living the life he has designed us to, by submitting to his lordship. That is true joy, eternal joy. He also prayed in verse 15, "I do not ask that you take them out of the world, but that you keep them from the evil one." Just like the Lord's prayer to deliver us from evil, Jesus prayed for us specifically that the Father would keep us from the evil one, for protection. Verse 17, Jesus continued to pray, "Sanctify them in the truth. Your word is truth." Jesus wanted us to be set apart. We're sanctified by his word, by his scriptures, by the things that he spoke to us, that they would cut us and change us into who he wants us to be. And lastly, in verse 20 and 21, he prayed, "I do not ask for these only, but also for those who will believe in me through their word, that they may all be one, just as you, Father, are in me and I in you, that they also may be in us, so that the world may believe that you have sent me." In John, there's a lot of I and you and me, and this whole abiding part. And it can be confusing at times and the lines get blurred. And I think it's because Jesus wants us to be so unified that it looks like his relationship with God. That unity all is one. That there's overlapping structures of this unity that Christians have in Jesus. And that is our distinctive feature. And so Jesus prayed for our unity, for our joy, and for our sanctification. Because these are the things he cares about. And these are the things that we should be praying about as well. So Jesus, he prayed for us, the same people who would betray him. Now, if I were to ask you who betrayed Jesus, you would probably say Judas, because John 6, verse 71, and 12, verse 4, and 13, verse 27, and 18, verse 2, it explicitly says Judas was the one to hand over Jesus. But chapter 18 is a little bit more ambiguous than that, because it seems like Jesus actually is handing over himself. So in verse 4, when they ask for Jesus, he says, "I am he." He surrenders himself to be arrested, but when he says that, they fall to the ground behind him and acknowledge his lordship. And so they ask, and then Jesus says, well, why don't you come and get me? Because I already said. And they ask, "We're looking for Jesus." And he says, "I am he" again. And there's the same sort of tension. John's gospel is unique because a lot of what he is doing is ironic. So on one level of this arrest, Jesus is being arrested, betrayed. And on the other side of it, he is handing over himself on our behalf to die for us. And that is a powerful truth about Jesus' arrest, is that he prayed for you, and then he headed to the cross for you. The rest of chapter 18 follows a similar theme. It seems like they are all accusing Jesus of what he actually did, when actually Jesus is just handing over himself. The high priest, for example, accuses Jesus of, what did you teach? And Jesus says, well, I just taught plainly, you should know. And then he's struck and he says, well, if I did wrong, why did you strike me? It's so weird that Jesus is completely innocent in the entire thing, but yet he is still being accused. And even with his confrontation with Pilate, Pilate asks him, are you the king of the Jews? And Jesus says, well, you said I am. And it seems once more that actually, yeah, Jesus is the king. This irony is painting a picture for us of our king that is handing over himself, who handed over himself on our behalf. A last feature of John 18 that I want to draw your attention to is what Pilate asks Jesus at the end. What is truth? By this point, we can answer this question from Pilate through the rest of John's gospel. What is truth? How about his last I am statement? I am the way, the truth, and the life. Jesus is the truth. The life he lived, the sacrifice he did on behalf of you, that is truth, and that is real life. Jesus had full control over his ministry, over his handing over, and over his death. I'm captivated by his prayer that he prayed for me, for us, even though he knew we wouldn't meet the mark. He prayed those things so that we would be unified, sanctified, that our joy would be full, and that we would be protected. And then he headed to the cross to die on our behalf. And so I want us to ask the same question Pilate asked. What is truth? And how does Jesus redefine truth?